back to the channel. Today we're working on this 550. Wait a second. Nope, we're working on this M5 right here, the tumbler. Here we are, we have the tumbler in the building. Here is the OEM Sachs clutch we'll be installing. And here is the lightweight flywheel. Compared to the OEM flywheel, this is considerably lighter. Should offer quite the performance gain. I think we might have a scale around here that we could measure the difference here. All right, so you got the AC machine zeroed out here. All right, put the OEM flywheel on. £31, 9.25 ounces. All right. Now we'll go with the lightweight. So it's 41% lighter than the OEM flywheel. Now back to the tumbler. Next thing is to get it up in the air. I want to show you guys how to remove the SMG. So I've already got the covers removed. It has all the main covers here and in the front. So we're going to start with removing the E12 with the 14 here, and then going down this way, we're going to take these 13s off here and here, and then there's also on each end of the bar, there's a 13 up in there that we'll just loosen, so we can just slide the bar to the side. And then back here, next to the muffler delete, there'll be 13 millimeters for these brackets for the exhaust. I'm gonna drop the exhaust out, so then we can get all of the 8s and 10s that hold on these covers, so we have access to the drive shaft. And actually, we'll probably only do these ones up here and then leave the drive shaft up in the vehicle. With the 10 covers removed, you can now see all the drive shaft. So we're gonna undo the drive shaft here after marking it. And then we're also gonna undo the brace plate here. So when we get to doing the bell housing bolts and pulling the SMG out, we'll be out of the way. And we're gonna do the 13 millimeter bolts there for the CSB. And after that, we should be able to support the transmission, start undoing the mount. All right, now drive shaft's removed. Now, I'm gonna do this bolt here. It's typically an Allen, this one ends up being a Torx. And then E12 right through here, but to get to it, just gonna have to pop the O2 sensors off right there. And you can see the little Torx right there. And with that guy out, we can pull the cooler back. A little stud right about there. And the cooler comes out. Now we have access to these harnesses here. This one going to the SMG pump. This one going to the hydraulic unit. So basically with all these wires, they like to get hot, come apart. It's a very common problem on the SMG 3 here. So be careful with all these wires. Try not to touch them as much as possible, even though we're about to be touching them quite a bit. Then up here we have upstream O2 sensor. Undo that one from both sides, because this bracket's gonna have to come out of the way. It's held on by these 3 10s. And then we have the crank sensor. Disconnect, and then I think that's a 4 millimeter. And so we're gonna undo all of these connectors here, and then we'll be able to get the tranny jack under it, undo the 13s, 6 of them for the transmission mount. And then we can start getting to the bell housing bolts. On the O2 sensor connectors, they do have little tabs on them. You can give like a little screwdriver or a pick. You can also just kind of muscle them apart too and pull them. And then should be almost good to go. One cool thing about the SMG is it's all like self-contained, so there's no lines going to coolers in the front or anything like that. All the fluids contained in there, and so we won't lose anything. Let's go. right, now that we have everything disconnected electrically and with the mounts and the drive shaft, we can take out the E12 bell housing bolts that go right here. And then at the 12 o'clock position, there's gonna be a really small bolt. That's the last one that holds on the starter, so don't undo that one. Once the SMG's out of the way, we'll show it to you, but we've got everything disconnected here, so ready to pull it out. All right, the SMG is removed. I don't know if there's enough light, but you can see here, there's that little bolt I was talking about at the 12 o'clock position. It's holding the starter. So now to remove the clutch and the flywheel. To remove the clutch, especially if you're gonna reuse the clutch, you're gonna need this tool here. So go in and keep everything aligned. Just insert it all the way in there. I'll show you again. So you're just gonna insert it in. And then you can kind of feel this latch in place. So just push the handle in. And then as you undo the pressure plate and the clutch, it's gonna expand. And then you're gonna have a bunch of tension right here. Right now it's loose because the bolts are holding it tight. And then it's gonna stop all of the discs from moving, so everything will stay in time. So now that we have the tool in, we can undo all the bolts on the outside here, a half a turn at a time, then we can take the clutch off. Here's the clutch removed. So now the special tool no longer has play in here. And so it's also really handy because then you can put this part into a vise. And yeah, when you're reassembling, it'll be very nice. But so we put in a new clutch in, so we won't really need to reuse this, but that's how you use the tool. And we will use the tool to reinstall the new clutch. All right, now we're gonna remove the flywheel. Another special tool, this extended T60 here, because the bolts are way in there. And they're captured to the flywheel, so you can't actually remove the bolts. We do know of a guy that tried to use a T55 because it's more common, and then he rounded the bolts off and then had to take it to a machine shop and they damaged the crank. It was a bad deal, so extended T60. As you can see, it's not just gonna fall off on you, so don't need to worry about that. There we go. Now would be a good time to do the rear main seal, along with this pilot bearing for right here next to it. A lot of this fluid though, is likely coming from inside the SMG here. There's this cap here that likes to leak. And then if we remove the throwout bearing, the shift fork, and if we take these tins out, there's a seal behind there also. And then, look on here, this has got the original pivot pin, which we got all new stuff for this one. So they make one in a brass, but that used to be the fix. Then everybody decided that the brass one's too soft and metal. Now they have stainless steel. So we'll be doing the stainless steel on this one. But yeah, basically either stainless steel or go back with the factory plastic one, because these plastic ones last 100,000 miles plus, so could definitely just use those. But we have some leaks to fix, and then also some wiring issues to prevent. Okay, so we remove the dust shield. It does look like this seal, the SMG, is leaking down and getting spun all around. And the slave cylinder, which has been a known issue you guys have seen before, is actually looking pretty dry. So, and then the wiring that has known issues here. Then it'll be time to put the lightweight flywheel on with the new clutch. Now that we have our hydraulic unit wiring all heat shrinked individually and then wrapped with the official BMW tape, put the part number in the description for that. We also put some liquid electrical tape at the very end here. We couldn't get the tape or the heat shrink all the way to the very bottom, which, by the way, be very careful because once the wire insulation starts breaking, it will go all the way into the sensor. But we also got the inside of the bell housing all cleaned up. So shift fork, the stainless steel pivot pin in there, lubricated on the pin and on the splines. And we just overall cleaned up the transmission here. So now it's time for the clutch. I'm replacing this 31-pound option with this nice 18-pound option from Euroconics. So if you remember, on our factory, the OEM flywheel here, we had the T60s. They're inside the hole, captured bolts. They're still in there. For our non-dual mass lightweight flywheel, we have these bolts. ARP also makes them. They're M12 by 1.5 by 30s. These bolts we did not get from ARP because ARP is sold out currently, but these are grade 12.9. So we're gonna use these with the same torque spec and then install it just like you would the OEM flywheel. All right, even though we switched from a dual mass flywheel to this lightweight flywheel, if you can see here, one of the holes is different than the others. And which one is it? That's right, it's that one. So that one is gonna go up there on the hole with the dowel. All right, so I used the bolts for the flywheel and put them all in there snug just so it would hold the flywheel evenly to the back of the crankshaft here. And the BMW procedure doesn't say to put Loctite on there, but just habit of a lot of flywheels putting Loctite on there. So I put Loctite on there anyway a little bit. The torque spec on it is 105 Newton meters. So we're gonna torque it down to 105 Newton meters, even though it's technically a wet torque, not a dry torque now. But use blue Loctite on it and done 105 Newton meters quite a few times. And not once has any of the bolts ever backed out. And also on the tumbler here, it needs all the tightening it can get because it definitely gets put through its paces. So let's torque some bolts. Oh, and lastly, there isn't a sequence for torquing this like there is on the clutch. So we're just gonna kind of go in like a star pattern, you know, but here we go. Flywheel is torqued. Now we're just gonna clean off this surface here and we can get the clutch. It's kind of hard to see, but on the back of the flywheel, there's these holes here. On the back of the clutch, there's these springs. So the springs have to fit evenly with no tension. All right, here we are with our clutch and this tool from earlier. And so what we need to do is put the clutch on the tool. And so don't open or don't cut these until we're ready to put it on there. And also make sure that your white marks right here on the sides are lined up so you know it hasn't moved in shipping. If it has, let Saks know and they'll send you a new one. But let's mount this onto the special tool. So the tabs here came out when the clutch went on. Now there's no free play and everything moves together, so we can go install it onto the flywheel. All right, so now we can start putting on our bolts. And do make sure that you have this mark on the clutch 180 degrees off from the mark on the flywheel. All right, so now we're gonna insert the bolts into the clutch that hold it on to the flywheel. And so the clutch here has a torque sequence, unlike the flywheel. Here it is. But also, I numbered it too. A little bit easier to see when you're installing it, so looking at a sheet of paper. And I like when you take the clutch off, You don't have to tighten it after in revolutions, but it'll still be nice to have the sequence ran onto the clutch here. And because the circlip's on, it should go on with no tension. And the tightening torque for the clutch to the flywheel is 10 Newton meters plus or minus 2. All right, now it's time to torque the clutch onto the flywheel. Set up for 10 Newton meters. I did go around and snug all of the bolts up. We're gonna go around twice to verify that the torque is correct on it, because very frequently you'll have one bolt torqued and by the time you go through the whole torque sequence, another one is loose. So this will be the first pass around. Yeah, some key components to remember on this. It's pretty much make sure everything is clean, make sure nothing's under a lot of tension. So when we clean the flywheel before putting the clutch on, use brake clean and a rag there. Don't have any grease or fingerprints or anything like that on the surface of the flywheel. And then to go around and verify that the springs are all in their holes on the flywheel and not under tension. But if you do those things, putting the clutch on is really not that hard. You could definitely do it in your driveway. If you have make some of those jacks that have little transmission holders on them. Because the SMG itself comes out of the E63 M cars pretty easily, as you guys saw. So if you're pretty motivated, you could definitely get this done in the driveway. Obviously, it's very helpful to have a lift. Even like scissor jacks would be cool. And I guess another thing I forgot to mention earlier was how we held the crank. There's various crank holding tools for the S85. There's a nice one that attaches down here and holds it. There's also ones that are more useful and for when the engine's out or you're doing a rebuild, which is mainly what we have. So for this, I just put the this bolt down here. Put the bolt right there, and then if you guys look at the video, there's a pry bar right there, stopping it. You can definitely get away with doing the pry bar and a bolt trick. Have not seen that damage a flywheel yet. Not saying that you can't damage one, just saying haven't seen one yet. So using a couple of the S85s that we will be rebuilding and have for sale soon. This is the crank holder. It has two-sided, bigger side for S85. For if you're doing like timing or anything basically where you have the cooling fan off, this one works really good. The other one is for if you're not doing that and you have access to the flywheel in the back. Go around for the second time here. The other one is indeed loose. So we're gonna hit 2 again. 2 is loose. 3 was a little bit loose, but not as bad as the first 2 there. 4 is solid. 5, we got a little bit out of it. There was just a little bit of looseness in number 6. 7, not so bad. And see, now 9 is loose. Okay, so there was number 8. Okay, so right there, number 1 was on point, but usually go around until they're all good 100% of the way through. So they're all at 10 Newton meters plus or minus 2. Let's see here where this one is. 9.3. There's 10. Barely even turning it. So 8.7. Just a little nudge. So they are all within spec. All right, so now at this point, since everything is torqued properly, we can remove the circlip that comes on there if you get a new clutch. And pull the special tool out. It sometimes can be rather tricky. Oh my God. So usually they come out a little bit easier than that. All right, one last look at everything here. All right, we're good to go. Now back to the transmission. All right, so all of our final checks are done. Everything's tight and right, so now time to get it back in. I think on most of this stuff, it's gonna be pretty straightforward. I mean, it's the opposite of removal. There are a couple little things along the way I may stop and inform you on. Starting off with, when you're putting the bell housing and the engine together, don't force it, even if you're only an inch away. Make sure that it seats fully before putting bolts in and pulling it tight. It's gonna be pretty straightforward, so I'm gonna throw it on time lapse. We'll get this SMG from hydraulic table to tranny jack to tumbler. As you can see from the time lapse here, it's also nice when putting the SMG in to have a helper. Going solo on this one did not work out that well. Luckily, Kaylee came to the assistance. All right, when it comes to bell housing bolts, see if we can focus over here. Okay, so this one over here, and that one over there. Going to the starter, there's that middle bolt I showed you when the transmission was out. All right, now that we have all of the bell housing bolts in, we're gonna go through, torque them all. There's quite a few different options for torques, as far as hex head or Torx head, steel, length of them, etc. But ours are pretty much all gonna be 43 Newton meters. And after we torque all the bell housing bolts, then we'll put on the drive shaft, start putting in the cooler, electrical connectors, and then eventually get to the exhaust and the undercovers. But we have to still leave access to this guy right here so we can bleed it on the CH11S side of the gearbox. And then since this one had that input shaft seal leaking, we're also gonna service the gearbox itself too. I wanted to show you guys a couple things before we got too far into putting it back together. On this round connector here, as you can see, you can try to start it multiple ways, and it's not gonna go on completely. If you look at this connector here, let's spin it around a little bit. You can see right here, I'll zoom in for you. You see on this round connector that there's one arrow there, but on this connector, but not an arrow on that connector. Along with, there's a little bit of a gap there. So this connector is installed incorrectly. If you rotate it over a little bit more, there's an arrow. Those two need to line up. On the drive shaft, make sure you put it back where you marked it before taking it off. Along with on the center support bearing too. We are all back together underneath for the most part, for this stage of it at least. Not putting any of the covers on, really, besides the ones that go on the other side of the exhaust, because we're gonna bleed the system on it. Now that we have everything tight and right, we'll lower it down and then put IST on and do the transmission adaptations. The tumbler's back down on the ground again. Welcome back, baby. All right, when we did, I believe, the Texas M6 video, I did an excerpt in it for a transmission adaptation with a St. Louis M6. And one of you let me know that a few steps were missing, so we're gonna redo that video one step at a time, make sure they're all there. So any of you trying to do this at home have all of the steps. So bear with me as we start another video right about now. So we have the charger hooked up under the hood. We have our DCAN, KCAN cable here. And then we have laptop with the software needed. So going in here, first we're gonna make sure the vehicle interface is set up for DCAN, KCAN here. And then we're gonna go read out vehicle data, complete identification. And if everything is set up correctly, VIN number is gonna pop up here in the corner. And there's the VIN number. And loading the vehicle work order. E chassis vehicles, take a little while to load. All right, so we're all loaded up here. Green rectangles here are modules that we have communication with no codes. The yellow rectangles are modules that we have communication with but have error codes in them. Red rectangle is a module that we cannot communicate with. In this case, it's CID because the tumbler's got an F10 screen in it. So that explains that. We can go down here and do display fault memory. It's going to pull up all the codes. Some are for low voltage, a lot of low voltage. One's an O2 sensor. Got some SMG codes in there. So we'll delete all of those. We should delete down there at the bottom. Confirm. And then it's going to want you to change the terminal. On an F series, it still will actually change the terminals for you. On the E chassis, we have to push the button ourselves, like peasants. So terminal change. All right. And then we can either do start vehicle test down here in this bottom corner, but we're going to go up to vehicle management at the top there, then down to service functions on the level right below that, and then over here to powertrain, SMG transmission control unit, service functions, exchange and repair, and then we're going to do replacement and repair, the only option. And then when we get to here, we're going to go with transmission control because it goes through all of the adaptations when you do that, even though we only did the clutch. So we're going to tell it transmission control. You can go through and say clutch and go through the specifics of exactly what you did, and you won't get the full option list here. But in this case, we're going to go through all of them and teach the transmission 100%. Starting with teaching the clutch valve characteristic value. So click that one, push continue at the bottom. And then terminal 15 on, engine off, yes. It just means being in ignition 2, so we saw where all the lights on the dash turned on. That would be ignition 2. And then you can hear the clutch valve operating down there, along with the pump. Let's see, test program not completed correctly. So, in this case, we're going to rerun it. So we're getting a fault for disengagement, position outside tolerance. So we're gonna go back. We have to figure out why the disengagement position is outside of tolerance. Which I'm thinking it is because we are low on fluid. So we're gonna go back here to hydraulics. So after replacing clutch slave cylinder, because we did open the lines to it. Was the hydraulic system of the sequential M gearbox opened? I'll say yes. I'm gonna do vent clutch slave cylinder up top. Should be venting, but we're gonna go underneath the vehicle and make sure that we have enough fluid in there. We're under the tumbler with our CH11S, but no leaks, so that's a good thing. So we're just gonna get it topped off here and continue the ventilation process. All right, so clutch ventilation ended with no faults. So we go continue here. I'm gonna say no, so we won't bleed it again. And then we'll do the teach-in. And continue. All right, we've moved on to the second part of it. Yeah, the beeping is mildly annoying. Good old BMW gong. I'm sure everybody's having a mild heart attack right now. As you can hear out here, it is running. As it stopped. Oh. So ventilating the slave cylinder definitely helped. Getting us one step closer to running this. Now it says program terminated, but completed successfully. So we can go to continue here. And it's gonna save the teaching values. Now we're gonna go back from here. Instead of doing teaching clutch slip point, we're gonna go back. We're gonna go to the main section. And then go back to where we started with transmission control. And then go into here. So we already did clutch valve just now. So we're gonna do complete transmission. With this one, terminal 15 on, engine off, clutch disengaged, and then service brake or the park brakes off. And we'll push continue. And on this, you can hear the transmission actually shift gears. It sounds mildly violent. Cleaning of the gearbox is complete. So now I'm gonna turn off the PDC, push continue. It's gonna save the teaching values, so we'll get the before and after, which is exactly how it was before, so that's good. This is where it's gonna store the adaptations, and it'll set some codes that will clear. We'll get to that later on. But now we can do the teaching of the clutch slipping point. This will be kind of the moment of truth. So transmission in neutral, engine on and running at idle speed, no accelerator pedal, and then your transmission input speed must be 0. So we'll do yes after we start it, because it's gonna start now. Told ya. So, there we go. Okay, push continue. Once engine off, ignition on. Push continue. I'm gonna do the save teaching values. Get the before and afters. There were some changes made there. Mild, but changes made. Also, it's a good idea to read some of this information here on the right hand side. Very useful stuff. And then we'll do the last one, the acceleration sensor. Push continue down at the bottom again. Terminal 15 on, engine off, yes. And continue. On this one, you're definitely going to want to be on flat ground. If you're not, it's going to cause quite a few issues, so be someplace flat. Alright, so that's been completed. I'm going to save the teaching values. They're identical to how they were before, so that's good. Alright. And just to show you guys, to go back to the main section, if we go back and do, let's say, just doing the clutch, for instance, and doing clutch replacement, and then say no, I'm bleeding the hydraulic system. Basically, you get these two tests to do. I prefer to do all of them. It doesn't take that long to do all of the available ones for the SMG. It just kind of keeps it all up to date with how the current parts are and their wear level and everything, so definitely prefer to do that. And that's about it. And it's pretty easy to do. The hardest part of all of this is going to be getting ISTA to run on a laptop. It's a lot better than the days of DIS, but ISTA, once you get it installed and running correctly, very handy. I suggest all E63 car owners have a laptop with it on there, because you can do all sorts of things. I mean, the ease of which you can just go up to engine electronics and then do vanos ventilation right here. Priceless. Now that we've got the adaptations done, it just starts and we have a check engine light. Interesting. Good thing we have this ISTA hooked up here, so I'm not sure exactly what is going on. Because the tumbler has a tune, so that should not be secondary air, even though it kind of sounded like it, but let's see how fast it revs. It's pretty, the ease of it is pretty noticeable. We'll do a side-by-side comparison, but it feels pretty good so far. Forgot to mention that you will have some codes. So DME, SMG, CAN 1, 2, and 3 here are all going to be from doing the adaptations, so be prepared to clear those codes. It happens every time you do the adaptations or you do a Euro SMG tune. And a lot of times, even if you do a DME tune, these codes set, you can just clear them and you'll be good to go. All right, time to go for a little test drive. No lights on the dash, so that's good. Minus the fact I need to put a seatbelt on. Okay, there we go, no lights on the dash. We're gonna turn the SMG shift firmness up, because when it is at a lower shift firmness, indicated by that little bar right here, it's actually allowing the clutch to slip more, and we're doing a break-in, so we don't want it to slip if at all possible. Initial impressions at low speed though, it definitely doesn't take, like, I'm not really pushing on the gas much or like at all, and it wants to accelerate a lot easier, we'll say. Kind of bumpy, but too bad it's raining. You gotta keep most of the windows up or else you can hear. She's got quite the sound to her. This is one of the Outlaw 5s. I definitely have a better feel for it. The tumbler here does have the same tune as the Outlaw 5s, so they feel pretty similar, but they're never going to be identical. I mean, even the Queen and the Outlaw 5 have way different feels to them, and they also have the same tune and a lot of the same mods too, but I do say it seems to be able to rev pretty easy. Oh, whoops. The downshifts are nice. The downshifts are nice. Alright, I'm going to continue the test drive here. I'll be back when we're turned around. Alright, we are on our way back to the shop. Gone for about 15 to 20 miles round trip. The break-in is going to be, depending on the amount of shifting you do and type of driving, you're going to be looking between 500 to 800 miles. And they're saying Pretty much don't do takeoff RPMs higher than 2,000. Don't downshift above 2,000. Upshift at 3,500 to 4K. Don't go above that. And yeah, no heavy loads. Not even really medium loads. I feel like I'm giving it more in this one for sure. Yeah, that was more than the other one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Outlaw out.